Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This particular item is, up until today, was a lot of old business. I don't know if we have the applicants on the phone. They could not appear here today for this hearing, so we're going to use a little bit of technology, the telephone. But if I might go ahead, this particular application has gone through the conceptual plan process. I have a slide presentation. Basically, we're all familiar with the location. We're all familiar with the concerns that we had, and not so much with the site plan. Everything else, with the exception of one comment that I have that I'll save for later, the issue has been the building elevation. So what I've done, and what I'm noticing is not in here, is I did include 5 renditions of the building elevations that we have looked at over the course of 3 or 4 months. If I can, I'd like to go through these slides. I'm sorry. No, I'm going to have to stand up.
It doesn't work on the TV screen anyway.
Oh, it doesn't?
No, the clicker works, but the laser pointer doesn't show up on the monitor.
Ooh, okay.
They can use the mouse. You can go over there and use the mouse pointer on the monitor. The mouse pointer shows up if you can do that.
You're going to have to give me the phone number because I'm using my laptop for something else.
Excuse the interruption.
What's his name? And you want him to speak instead of you? Is that what
Larry, in the meantime, though, your PowerPoint shows 5 different renditions of
Yes,
where it started and where we're at.
There was supposed to be included in the packet the 5 different elevations, and I'm just noticing now they're not in here. But I do have them on the screen. And I believe the planning board has seen all but one. One I sent back without bringing it before you, either by email or in person.
Everything's going to be just fine. All right, Larry, point at the silver laptop, and you should be good.
Doesn't show up on the screen. Okay.
The clicker works to progress your slides.
I'm going to have to stand up. Okay, this first slide obviously is the site development plan. We're all familiar with it. I mentioned earlier that I had a comment that I wanted to bring up with regard to the site plan. And unfortunately, well, yes, it is working. This median island here, I had made comments previously that we need a connection sidewalk from the site out to State Road 100. So that is a comment that, should this be recommended for approval this evening, that condition be carried over to the City Commission.
Can both of you hear? Hello?
Yes, I can hear.
Yep.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Welcome, I believe it's Mitch. Anyway.
This is Matthew.
Oh, yep. I'm sorry, I keep getting you mixed up. Matthew, I apologize.
No worries.
Got the first letter right, though. That's a good thing. I'm going through the 5 renditions of the elevations that we have looked at, from the initial to the one that the planning board will be looking at this evening to recommend approval or whatever else conditions that may be associated with it. But this was presented back in August. I'm not going to go through a lot of detail, but you've all seen this before. But the progression of it, I thought, was pretty interesting to see how we arrived at where we're at today. This is the second iteration. Some changes to the facade, some decorative elements added. This third iteration, I'm not certain that, this is the one I was referring to, I'm not certain that the board had seen or not. I know an email was sent out, but I can't recall whether or not it was distributed from the applicant to the planning board, but this is a complete turnaround from the expectations of what I thought the planning board would want to see. So this leads us into the fourth iteration, which was a month or so ago. They were getting closer. They were adding some articulation to the building, some massing, the parapet, roof, and so forth. They've come back with this iteration, which is the elevation that is before you this evening to consider for final site plan approval. They have incorporated quite a few building elements. The roof line in particular is much, much better, visually pleasing. I believe they also improved the symmetry of the building by the addition of this second parapet. You can look at each elevation, front, side, rear, and you can still get that effect of the roof line that is carried over from the public shopping center. They've introduced both asphalt and metal on the roofing. But I'm open to any questions. My recommendation from a staff perspective was to recommend approval to the City Commission with two comments associated with that. One is the sidewalk that I mentioned earlier. The second is the materials schedule that is included in this submittal. It must be from an earlier rendition of the building, because some of the materials that are specified are not being utilized on this structure. That being said, I'm happy to answer any questions.
And Larry, just one more thing from your staff report. You also had a comment in there that reminding the power board that they are not approving the signage that's shown on the elevations. It's shown there for reference, but it's not part of their approval request.
Correct, and I did make a comment to that, and yes, signage is not a part of this approval.
Just the building.
Just the building, correct.
How many bays are there going to be?
There's 8.
Because they're showing, what, 6 per side there.
No, there's 4. I mean, the applicant is here. There's 4 on each side. The other 2 were just, it's decorative glass from what I've seen.
Okay. So it looks like more bays from the road.
Yes, but that part of those ends of the building are actually articulated out.
Larry, when you say that the material schedule isn't correct on this, for example, like P7 is fiber cement siding, James Hardy, how do we know it's correct then?
Because I went over the materials list for each of the items that's on the building, and I can't recall, there was 3 or 4 though that are on that schedule that are not a finish for this building. And the applicant is on the phone, maybe they can address that and get specific to the ones I'm speaking about, but there was 3 or 4 that I recall that was on the materials list that was not on this building.
Yeah, if they could clarify which ones they are, that'd be helpful. That'd be.
Yeah, so the architect, unfortunately, wasn't able to join the call, but if it's just 3 or 4 materials that just aren't being shown, we can remove those from the sheet, no problem. It shouldn't be an issue.
The question is, there are, from my perspective, when I reviewed that, there are several call-outs in that finishes legend that do not apply to this building. And what's specified on the elevations as the material finishes.
I think that's what I understood the applicant to be saying, was that if there are finished materials that are included in the list that aren't included in the actual building, they'll remove those by commission. I think that's what the applicant said.
They're just not applicable.
And again, I asked that be corrected before this would advance to the city commission, should it be approved.
Okay, then we get comments from our board. Does anyone have questions? Scott?
I'm asking.
Looking much better than the beginning.
Yeah. Scott?
No questions, I'm good. Thank you.
Brenda?
I just have a couple questions. Respecting the note that it's going to be on two sides, the signage, so how are they going to, will they continue the white band, or will they just be solid green on the two that's not there? We really don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I can tell you, though, the signage, the way it's shown, is not compliant with the regulations.
Right, because we have four sides.
Correct.
And I'm going to ask questions because we do this to everybody that's in this commercial area. I take it that the roof access is internal?
Yes.
Okay. And, this is just, I think choosing teal as that roof color is a bit much. It kind of takes away from the subtle sophistication of the plaza, but it is a good-looking building for what it is, and I have no more questions.
Paul, do you have any comments? Larry, I think they've come a long way, and I appreciate your efforts in helping us get to this point. And obviously, hardy board, or that siding, that look, well, hardy in itself is on other buildings throughout the development, Publix. Is the fiber cement siding, James Hardy, their panels, and they will have butt joints. Is that correct?
I can't speak to the butt joints, but my understanding is, yes, they're cementitious type panels. So perhaps the applicant can.
Could the applicant address how that butt joint would be treated? Will we see it? Do you caulk it? Do you?
I do not have the answer for that. As the architect was able to jump on, but we can get that answer for you. Is there a certain method that the city would prefer that we can relate to the architect that I've shown on that plan?
Well, I know that they come in. Somebody have an answer? No. I just don't want them to look like fake siding. Hardy may have a solution, but I know that a lot of times they'll put a trim piece over it. Now you got board and batten look versus just a flat, true cement stucco look. So I'm a little concerned about that. I don't want you to diminish the quality of your product by looking cheaper. That would be one of my questions. Then the massing, I like the symmetry on each side with the hip roofs, but on the front elevation and the rear elevation, you're going to have those large green spaces. Now, is that where the signage will go, or is it on the right and left elevation? They're showing all four.
Correct.
Could it be on all four?
No.
No? Okay. So if it's on the, well, I guess it depends on where it goes.
I can tell you, Mr. Chairman, that the signage, they will be permitted one wall sign, primary, 32 square feet, and one secondary sign. That would be one half the size of the in area than the primary sign. So whatever side they select, it would either be I presume, the east or west elevation.
So I would think that probably the right elevation or the left elevation would be Moody, and that would probably be a primary sign. And then the east elevation, which is the front of the building, would probably be a secondary, maybe? I don't know. Well, I guess
I don't know,
my
but
point is, I don't know, the rear elevation, again, there's that large expanse. On each end, you have a delineation that looks like a column that goes up to a horizontal band. And then you got the big green space, F3 or F4, which is Hardy reveal panel. Again, I'm just wondering how these are going to just butt up to each other. And then if those little horizontal stripes are continued through, it might give it a better scale. My concern is the rear and the front. I love the right and the left. I think that all works well. The front with the storefront looks good. And then the rear is going to be the side that's facing west, I guess.
Mr. Chairman, if I may?
Yep.
I think we should resolve this evening that wherever the signage is not on the building, that we establish how we would like those spaces finished, because you're correct. You look at those blank green panels, and if you take the signage away from the main part of the structure, the center part, that's, I don't want to use the word hideous, but they need to do something, either carrying that double line white banding through, or put some kind of ornamental finish on that green to give, just to break up that band.
Yeah. If I look real close, it looks like there are some vertical black lines on those towers on each side. Maybe the butt joint, maybe what you could do, just as a recommendation, maybe it's not totally butted, maybe the panels aren't butted together and you use some kind of a PVC reveal to create a true finished detail that the panel can butt up to. I just don't like seeing panel butt to butt with, that could undulate or deflect, or anyway, that'd be my recommendation, is to put maybe a PVC reveal, paint it the color of the panel, and then you'd have a true framing or something to die into.
If I could recommend, Mr. Chairman, is that the applicant be in contact with the architect. I thought they would be a part of this hearing this evening, but that they contact my office with addressing the comments that you're making, in that I can distribute it to the planning board between now and the city commission to get feedback on how they're going to treat that portion of the building.
Okay.
And also where they're proposing to put the signage. I'm sure they have an idea where it's going, but it's not going where it's showing on this set of plans.
I'm in agreement. So we're looking for a motion then? Oh no, we opened it to public? Okay. Thank you, Larry. We're now open up to the public. Anyone have public comment? Seeing none, we close public comment. Any final comments from the board? And we're looking for a motion.
Motion to recommend approval of SP number 23-01-01 with conditions, that the conditions be an update building material schedule prior to the city commission, that they'll be provided a 5-foot wide sidewalk connecting the median island from Moody to the right-of-way. And let me pause for a minute. Is the comment about the two sides that will not have signs, that are, they're going to be comments. How do we work that into?
I think where Joseph left that one, I think you can work that into your, if it pleases the motion maker, is that the applicant will have their architect work with Mr. Torino to resolve the final finish issues raised by the board prior to the commission meeting.
All right, so the condition will be that it is subject to there being interaction between their architect and Mr. Torino to resolve that. Okay, that's the motion.
Do we do a roll call or do we just take a vote?
You can have a voice vote, it's fine.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, recommendation approved. Next.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank you
you
guys very much. We appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome. B, application CSP 23-01-01, a conceptual site plan application received to be presented to the development plan for a mixed-use building. Larry?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, a conceptual plan review to provide feedback to the applicant and owner, each of who is in the audience here tonight to answer any questions. This property is situated on the corner of North Daytona and 2nd Street, northeast corner. There's currently structures existing on the site. The plan is to demolish those buildings and redevelop the site as a mixed-use building, 2 residential units above 2 commercial spaces. which is not a good situation. The site requires 7 parking spaces, 4 for the residential, 2 for each unit, and based on the square footage of the commercial area, that area would require 3 spaces. Actually, 40% of the spaces could be accommodated off-site. This is one of the very few buildings in the downtown area where there is sufficient space on the site to accommodate the required parking. So my recommendation, and I included an illustration in the packet, is to extend the parking that is showing going west to east behind the building, add a space there, and where parking spaces 8 and 9 are shown is to create what I call a teardrop, that anyone who's parked in space number 7, they can back into that teardrop and then make a turn, and a 3-point turn, and head out facing the street. Other than that, the site plan meets all the regulatory requirements. Building elevation, you have that before you. The owner has a penchant for old Florida and classical revival, and is proposing to use mostly brick on this building, really kind of to mimic a lot of the older structures that you would see in DeLand, but there are some, or were some, brick structures here in the city back in the day that personally I feel the selection of the finishes that I have seen actually the first time was with this application were very impressive to me. The only comment that I recall making, going to my notes, is there's a requirement of, on the primary street fronts, that each elevation, each frontage, have from 40 to 60% fenestration or window openings. And I'm not certain that, I didn't do any calculations, but I did have a question of the side that faces Daytona. I'm not quite certain that meets the 40% ratio. But all else, the materials they use, the storefront windows, the balconies, the finishes, the roof design, I believe are very well done. That's my opinion. I'm open to any questions that you may have, and like I say, the applicant is present, and I'm sure more than happy to explain and respond to any questions you may have.
Scott, Cheapest.
No questions at this time. I'm glad to hear they're starting over. They're not trying to rehab what's there. That building was built in the late 40s. And
Can you state your name, please?
Yeah. My name is Will Miller, and I'm the architect for John Brewer. So I worked with John on his house. He bought a 100-year-old house up on A1A looking out, and a cool house that he's restored for 3 years or 4 years, been working on. And so he's really hard and trying to do very nice and sensitive anything that he does. And he's taken a liking to Flagler Beach, so he hopes to do more things here. And I enjoyed the comments that everybody did. It lets me give some insight to what the city's looking for and everything. All good comments. And many times architecturally, or we all want nice, good buildings, and it's really hard to put that into words. And like the chairman was talking about the butt joints and all, it's very valid. It's really true. It's many times not what you say, but but how you say it, or not what you do, but how you do it. So those things are really important, very difficult to get into codes or words, so it's really nice hearing the discussion. One thing, and it's been a pleasure working with Larry as well. One of the things, Larry, we didn't talk much about the floor plan interior, but one thing to kind of clarify what Larry said about the stairs. The stairs, as they come up from the first floor in the back there by the parking, the second floor actually hangs over those stairs. So the first floor is about 16 feet ceiling height, high commercial space like the old buildings. So that second floor is way over those stairs, and where it shows on the second floor, the stairway coming out, that's where we need the head height there of that. So it actually does start back in the back and goes under the second floor for a ways, a couple of bedrooms there. And you know, good design versus bad, and we don't want to just decorate the building with bands, styrofoam bands and stuff. So we'll try to look for an authenticity way to make it look like a cool building and reflect historically some things. There's these kind of two-story buildings with living up above and commercial down below all over the state, and I know John's loved them, and every city's got them pretty much. So we're trying to do something authentic there and nice. So we'll just proceed if there's, and keep with comments, and we'll listen if you have any.
Will the, so that stair, if it's 16 feet tall, you have an intermediate landing somewhere?
Yes, yeah.
That's
yeah,
why.
Exactly. So we're coming up, and that intermediate landing's underneath the one of the bed there on the second floor, sort of. And it seems to work well, you know. It all just seems to work well, and Jonathan's allowed together spend enough time to try to keep working this and get it right. So it should be a fun project. Oh, and the building in the back, as much as John liked and loves old buildings and wanted to, we worked for several months trying to fix up that building in the back that we're now demoing, because it's just the value of this property is out front on the streets and not back in there, and the cost of fixing that building up is at least as much as it is tearing it down and rebuilding, and it's just not the right place for it. And then the way the parking in the back of this works perfectly, so that's how we ended up doing that. So.
That existing building, that site it's up higher than the street.
Yeah.
So.
Good comment. We need to get topos, and we don't have it, of that site, and we didn't get that, but that's the next step, is we have a survey and so forth, but we need to get some topos, because it does slope, and I don't show any of that on the drawing right now, so good comment.
So you may end up with a retaining wall or something.
Yeah, or steps up, ramp up to that. We've talked about having a little railing area in the front or something, where if it's a restaurant or coffee shop or something, they could have a little seating out there. So yeah, that's our next step, is to get a topo of that to see.
Joanne?
No comment.
Scott?
Trash. Brenda, did you notice the trash? I did.
I like the look of the building. I appreciate the effort to capture historical element, including the two-story with first floor commercial, second floor residential. And oddly enough, the example that's used is my office building where I am right now, just right 2 doors down. But I do like that look of the commercial under residential. So it looks really good.
Yeah, just, pardon me, to start out with a comment that I appreciate the design. I would call this a Hambro with the 3-inch poured concrete and the 12-inch joist. I mean, it just shows that you're thinking and you're constructing a quality product, because it does go from commercial to residential, and that's going to be a better living for each. A second thing that I like about it is the tucked-in stairwell, because the quality of life and the safety and all the slip and fall and stuff like that. I'm 100% behind this concept, but I'm also someone that asks questions, and I want to pose a couple of questions. Joanne was teasing that you have, you're showing four garbage cans there. Those are tippy carts.
Yeah, that's what I'm showing so far, and I haven't talked to sanitation or what types or anything, so, but yeah, and we kind of, I don't think I had anything then talking with Larry, and we kind of thought, can we put them there, so.
Yeah.
Good, yeah.
Just 2 comments.
Sure.
Whether you have 2 commercial properties or 1, and then you have 2 residentials, 4 just isn't going to get it.
Yeah.
And I don't see any place for commercial means a lot of cardboard and breakdown. And one of the things that I don't particularly like about it is that it's not showing that there's any sort of front or hidden. So everybody that comes down the street gets the pleasure of looking at the trash. And I live on the island. I live near commercial.
Okay.
And I'm not impressed by this, because raccoons open the tippy carts, they make a mess. I think we can do a better job with a little bit of thought on that.
Yeah, who in the staff would be the best to talk to? Is it, you want me to
Robert,
discuss?
yes.
I'll get with Larry.
Will and I did discuss this. In fact, one thing we had in mind, again, keep in mind that they have an additional space and they are entitled to parking spaces off-site as well, was to take the area where you currently see the two-foot landscape buffer and the access walkway for the handicap, was to create a dumpster site over in that area, fenced in and screened, and then begin the your parking to the east of that. That was one option we were looking at.
Because what I find in commercial and residential is, and again, here's one of my cliches, is that trash is not pretty as an afterthought. So if you guys, when you're going back to it, just kind of look at that.
Yeah, one, in the tippy carts, is that what it's called? Mm-hmm. If they, because I know with Larry, I think I originally had it over where that landscape area is, and I pushed two parking spaces into there to try to get back up. But then it was a matter of, are they carried to the street or not to empty? But we'll work on that.
Yes, it's just a suggestion.
Yeah, absolutely, it's real.
And it seems nitpicky, but
No,
we have to live with this building.
Yeah.
The residential people upstairs have to live with the building.
Yeah.
What's not in a tippy cart is outside of it, and it's not good.
And you're right about the recyclable area, boxes or something like that.
Let's just plan for it.
Okay.
Okay, and then I love the application. It was my favorite of any 2 I've read. And
That was John.
good job. He said that this could, for example, be a sushi restaurant, a martini bar, I'm salivating already, a diner, or many other businesses. With that said, if there had to be a grease trap or something, are we looking forward in that respect? Because I would think a diner would have a fryer, would have a...
Yeah, Jonathan Brewer. Thank you for the meeting. I'm enjoying it. My plan was to not have a grease trap and to just not accept a tenant who needed one. There are lots of restaurants that don't need one. Mm-hmm. I don't feel like we're in any shortage of French fries in town, so
Thank you.
I was just going to skip it. It's expensive too, so. Yeah.
Okay, and it's important to plan in that event, so good answer. And Good luck.
Paul, that is going to be the new parking with the teardrop? Or was that just a recommendation?
No,
That's an illustration. I mean, it's,
Okay.
yeah, that's what I got.
No, I have no questions. I wish you guys good luck.
Joseph.
It's really a pleasure working with John, trying to do something nice.
Have you folks considered bike parking?
No, I don't
You might want to put a place in there for people to, because if you're going to have a sushi bar, martini bar, or any of those things, I mean, there's a lot of us riding bikes around, simple as that. So,
good comment. The new code does require that.
does it?
Yep.
Okay. And I don't know if you want to go further and say golf cart parking, but I don't know how much room's left on this site, but I'd worry probably less.
Well, that was one of the things I was kicking around actually when I was looking at the parking arrangement.
Yeah.
Was to either put spaces in there, either for compact cars or for golf carts, because there is some area back in there that if you eliminate that one space, it does allow for some creative parking.
Good. Yeah, I can work it in. Thank you.
If we do go to it, so you have plenty of parking, and because you're in the CRA, you have the on-street parking availability. You might be able to put a dumpster back there, but then you'd have 7 spaces, and then you might be able to have enough left over for golf cart. That you'll figure that out. I like it a lot. I like the method of construction, which is long-term, and you're doing it the right way. Will, the only thing that I would ask you is to look at, on the west elevation, that 2-story large brick wall. I'm sure you have some brick detail somewhere that could intermediately scale.
I was just thinking about that, breaking the brick up in soldier courses.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, breaking the brick up in a decorative patterns with soldier courses or whatever, or precast, a lot of limestone or precast rhythm or something, and maybe light wall lights hanging out, and in the same character could do some work really nice. So, and we hadn't got that detail yet, but it's good hearing the comments because
I think the next time you present something, it'll be really, really high quality and look really nice.
Thanks. Yeah.
I love it. I think it'll be a wonderful addition to our city. It's what I like to see is good design will stimulate growth and business, and it's of high quality. And I think you did a great job for a preliminary review. Any other comments from the board? Do we don't open this up to?
You're welcome to. You're not required to.
Yeah. Well, we can open up to the public. Seeing none, we thank you for presenting it. Okay. Finally, let's see.
I'm probably going to have to stand up here anyway.
Application VAR 23-0101, a variance application has been submitted to allow an existing detached storage shed to remain in the current location, which is set back 10 feet from the front yard property line as opposed to the required minimum setback 25 feet from front property. Larry?
Just thank you, Mr. Chairman. One correction. The current location is set back 5 feet from the property line, so if I have that in my report, that's incorrect.
It's on the agenda.
Okay, that's an error. Okay, this item was brought forward as a variance as a result of a building permit application that was obtained from the city of Flagler Beach. The owner applied for the permit, asked questions about location, was told by staff that it had to be 30 feet back from the roadway, and inadvertently or not knowingly, the resident took that to mean from the edge of the road. So the project went forward. The shed was installed. It was completed. It was called for final inspection, and it failed final inspection for a zoning violation. So I want to go through a couple of few slides here. There are extenuating circumstances. Generally, if this were done in the normal course, I could not recommend approval or awarding of a variance for any kind of a hardship or whatever. But let's go forward here and start with the location. We're looking at 212 Lambert Avenue. That's good. That's good. You have everything that I'm showing here on the screen. It's not that legible from this distance, but you have in your packet. This is the survey document that was submitted with the building application. I'll try and point this out to you here. This rectangular diagram here is the shed. You can see a numerical notation of 30 feet shown with an arrow pointing one direction. No property line shown. So the applicant, when he asked where, how far do I have to be from my property line, the response was 30 feet from the roadway. The existing situation is such that I've shown in a graphic here, and probably much more legible in your report itself, but I've shown the roadway, which is 20 feet wide. There's roughly 32 feet from the edge of the roadway to the front property line. The shed is situated 5 feet from that property line. Currently, there is a fence just on the property line that is set back 3 feet in angles outward by the driveway entrance to the property line. So you have a property line, you have 3 feet to the fence, you have 2 feet plus or minus a few inches to the front of the shed. And you have the house, the residence, situated quite a distance from that detached structure. And I want you to get an idea, and you'll see something even more emphatical in another couple of slides. But the distance from the house to that accessory structure. In the bottom illustration is what I call a mediation option for the planning board to consider and for the city commission to make a determination on. And the reason I call it mediation is that, in my opinion, there are two responsible parties for that structure being where it is. One is that the applicant was given information that was not accurate, and secondly, a zoning approval was granted to install that structure where you see it, based on the documentation that was submitted. And I'm certainly not throwing anyone under the bus by any stretch of the imagination, but a document, a survey particularly, that does not show all 4 property lines and that involves a setback should not be accepted by the department because you don't know, you can't identify point A to point B. So that should have been denied from the outset. So in my opinion, I believe that's something that the city has to be responsible for. On the other side of the coin is the property owner and the responsibility of also doing some due diligence in verifying or validating that if in fact what was told to be is truthful or not, or accurate. But the fact remains, the individual was told, and they are here in the audience this evening, they were told from the roadway. So the interpretation of the roadway, in his opinion, was, and it happens a lot, where individuals feel that their property line ends or begins or ends at the pavement. It does happen. And a comment was made to me just the other day that, I always mow out to the pavement, and I just assumed it was my property. So here we are with this situation. In my opinion, to remedy it, right, wrong, or indifferently, is to move the structure back 10 feet. So you already have 5 feet from the property line. 10 feet would move it back to 15 feet. The side setback is not an issue at all. But I feel after making a site visit, actually a couple of times, the difference of 15 feet to 25 feet in the setting that structure is located is really irrelevant. And I do notice that in terms of obstruction to neighboring properties, that the neighbor to the south, that house where it's situated, the further back you move this structure, the more obtrusive it would be to me as a homeowner, as opposed to the location that it is at the present time. So let me go forward with this. This is an aerial view. I've tried to superimpose the structure at 5 feet from the property line and at 15 feet. Obviously, you could not see this from the trees, but I did this to give you an idea of the canopy that is over and around this particular structure. These dotted lines here is a dual driveway, and you can see how proximate it is to that access drive. This next photo, obviously a street view. There's fencing across the front property line. You see 3 different colors here. The orangey color is where the building is situated today. The gray structure, even though it's different looking, but this is what I use as an example, and the structure is 12 feet by 20. Where it would be, how it would look if it was set back at 15 feet. And the goldish color to the back is where the rear of the building would be if it were moved back to 25 feet. So at the 25-foot mark, roughly at the midpoint of the grayish building is where the front of the building would be. I think this gives you a pretty good picture. Again, I want to call back to your attention the distance between this structure and the house, which is easily over 100 feet, 150 feet away from this. To me, whether it's 15 feet or 20 feet or 25 feet, doesn't make that much of a difference, because you have it just stands out no matter where it would be in that front yard area. Even if it met code, it would still stand out, and you would question, well, what's that doing there? So again, I go by the book, but I also look at reality and what I consider common sense. And in my opinion, having to deal with a situation like this, by accident or not, and if you've been out there, it looks like it's a good setting for it. And I'm open to answer any questions.
Thank you, Larry. Scott?
Larry, what's moving this going to do to the drainage situation?
I think the applicants can speak more to that, but you can see by the pictures that are in the application packet, substantial water intrusion. I believe Mr. Ronan can speak more to that. He's more familiar with the property, but I do know the high point, and correct me if I'm wrong, is at the center point and falls to the sides, and it's actually been made more complex because of a home that was built to the north of it. The water basically drains into this yard. Where it's located now, after being at the site and visiting with Mr. Ronan, anywhere in that area where it currently is situated is okay, but the further back you move it, the worse it is.
Back towards the house?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I may have more,
Okay.
Joseph. Right now,
That's
I want to hear a few other comments and thoughts.
Joanne?
I just think it's strange to have it just sort of stuck there. I mean, it doesn't look like it belongs there. Obviously, if you want a separate building, I wouldn't like it if I were a neighbor.
And I might add, there was a public notice sent to homeowners within 300 feet, and to my knowledge, there's been no negative complaints about the shed.
Plus, we're not really here on whether there is going to be a building or not. It's just a matter of moving it. And so, you know, in my view, this is why you have variances, you know, from code. Is there a reasonable set of circumstances that would permit it? And I know, I mean, just in my daily law practice, looking at the way that there's problem solving, what to do, you have, you know, what you call a mediated result. And for me, what factors in this particular situation, why I would favor recommending the reposition location is this particular property. You know, like you said, if you move it back, there's going to be worse drainage issues, and also it's going to be more intrusion on the south side neighbor. So all of that, I think, should factor in. And subject to any other comments that I hear, it seems like that's a reasonable solution on a situation that wasn't entirely the homeowner's making to begin with, if at all. Thank you.
So who created these diagrams?
I did the diagrams, but the copy of the survey is a copy of the survey.
Okay, because when you look at the picture here, if you were to have them push this building to the proper area, it might interfere with the driveway. That's what I saw when I was out there.
Well, it would definitely interfere with the driveway, even moving it back to where I'm recommending it. It's going to be close with the ramp, but I believe there would be separation at 25 feet. And that isn't the reason for it being where it is. I mean, if it's 25 feet and you want to keep it on the side and put it where your driveway is, well, then that's what you do. But it's not a paved driveway, so, I mean, that's not the reason that I I made the evaluation that I did. I made it on the merit of what I saw out there and what, to me, made common sense.
Yeah, and I was out there visiting too, so that's why I was wondering, because this wasn't really what I was seeing out there, and
Which diagram are you saying?
these,
Yes, that, you know,
it's just
typically,
something that you put together is what you're saying.
well, not the survey, the illustrations I did. But the survey, typically when someone comes in for a shed, it's very, very unusual to have it drawn to scale and scaled properly. It's usually like you see it, hand-drawn. What's looked at really are the setbacks from the front property line, side property line, rear property line or side. That's what counts. The issue with this one is that the original survey has the front property lines on it. When a copy was made and it was submitted to the city, it did not have the front property line. So I'm saying, if it were me, I would have rejected that and said, where's your front property line?
Right. No, I'm just, and she's shaking her head, Jess, in the back there, because what I saw didn't correlate with this, and that if it is moved up, it is going to impede with the driveway. My last question, in our charges, it said, number 3, that granting the variance requested will not confer on the applicant any special privilege that is denied by the ordinance to other lands, buildings, or structures in the same zoning district. Does this set a precedent, or is this a one-off?
No, I'll let the attorney.
It's a one-off. It's, you have to decide every variance on its specific facts. And this has a very unique set of facts.
And that was very important to know. Thank you.
Paul?
All my questions are answered. I'm ready to make a recommendation.
Well, I know I wasn't supposed to be shaking my head, but I was shaking my head when I was looking at the survey, and I agree with you, Larry. I wish your office didn't accept it. I know you wouldn't have accepted it. And moving forward, I bet that doesn't happen again. I've been up and down Lambert a lot because I did some designs on the very end, Lambert Cove. And I've never seen anything in the front yard as a structure, but it's permissible.
It's permissible, but it must be set back the same dimension that's required of the principal structure. And the point that I was alluding to earlier is that this lot is over 230 feet in length, and I think it's 221 feet from the property line back to the seawall. And let's say, for the sake of speaking, the house is 25, 30 feet from the seawall. You have, 100, the owners want to walk that far to their accessory structure, that's fine, but it can go in the yard front. And I'm just saying it's accentuated because it's so separated from the main house. So it just pops out more.
Closer to the road.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I think the good news is that it's heavily I don't want to say landscape, but it has a nice tree canopy. And I think that your recommendation, I don't think it's going to make a difference whether it's 15 feet or 25 feet. So 15 would be a reasonable solution. Have you talked to the owners about that?
I did mention it to them. I don't know what the response is. One of the other recommendations was that they put perimeter landscaping around it, around the building, with the exception, obviously, of the access point. And I don't think they argue it. I'd like the owner to come up and answer some of the questions you may have. He's here.
Okay.
Hey, good evening. I'm Jeff Ronan.
Jeffrey, would you, Larry's recommendation, that was part of this presentation, is to go from 5 feet to 15 feet. Is that a reasonable
First of all, thanks for your time, and I really appreciate the compromise and all the things Larry has done to work with us to try to solve this problem has been amazing. Personally, my preference would be to not move it, but I'm the one that put it there, right? There's inside that shed, there's 4 motorcycles and a lawnmower, and the reason that I put it there was because I had to elevate it. I think it's elevated about 20 inches, which still wasn't high enough for this last hurricane. I had 5 inches to get inside it, so still not quite high enough. But because it has that kind of elevation, I have to have a really long ramp. Otherwise, the motorcycles will bottom out when they hit the apex of the ramp right there. So moving it forward and using that long ramp is going to put the ramp right into the middle of my driveway. So I would have to. That compromise is way better than the whole, follow the ordinance, because I had no idea where I was going to put it if I had to follow an ordinance. So I'd have to go back and just do a bunch of measuring to see what I could make work.
Yeah. Is it just on like concrete piers and then anchored down, or?
So we had last summer, sometime in the last year, we had our yard raised and resodded and the driveway raised because our entire yard was having flooding problems because of the house that Larry mentioned that was built to the north a few years ago, which we did complain about, and we just couldn't get any satisfaction, so we gave up on it. So while we had that built, I had that contractor build a pad for me, a dirt pad, that then we put crushed concrete for a few more inches up, and then it sits on top of that, and then it's anchored down with hurricane straps.
Okay. Thanks, Jeffrey. That's all my questions.
Thanks, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Brenda?
Thank you. If I'm correct, water does flow under that.
We have drainage under it.
Yes. So when we talk about some sort of a landscaping buffer, it would have to be some sort of a swamp-type plant. So I don't know if in the end that wouldn't be less aesthetic than just leaving it the way it is because the color blends. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
Larry, is there an option to not move it? We're outside of the parameters anyways. Now we're just outside of them just a little less.
It's up to...
No offense, sir, but the thing's an eyesore as far as I'm concerned, but it's there. Does it matter whether it's 5 feet to the road or 15?
Up to the board. That's a decision for you to make. So Larry's made his recommendation, but you are not obliged to follow that recommendation.
Okay. All right. I just don't see what good it's going to do to move the thing 10 feet. It's going to cost this man a small fortune to do it. And it was really done on an error that belongs to the city, I'm afraid.
Yeah. I personally don't. I think it's an eyesore myself because of, God bless you, you live on Lambert. It's wonderful, beautiful, but I wouldn't have put it there.
I don't know. You have any options? Obviously, the further back you go, putting a riverfront doesn't make any sense.
There's no room on the back side of my house for it.
Yeah. Okay.
And so it has to go in front of my house. And I've got too much stuff. So I need to put it somewhere. Yeah. And if you live where I live and have the front yard that I have, that is the only place, unless I put it right in the middle of the yard, which would look stupid, but is the only place to put it, is that corner.
Okay.
So.
I think we shouldn't move it at all.
So.
What's the difference?
Well, you and Scott made a good point. I guess we entertain a motion.
If that's the will of the board, that's the will of the motion maker at least, then the motion would be to approve a variance allowing the accessory structure to stay in its current location.
Recommended approval.
And that is what the owner has requested.
Sure.
As variance.
So I have to say, if you sent letters out to Lambert Avenue, and I see, well, I guess we have to open up to the public. Okay.
Nothing came back? Nothing came back on those letters that were sent? Okay.
No,
Yeah.
but this is post office. 8 months later.
Yeah.
Goes to Daytona before.
Jeffrey, thank you. You can.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to open this up to the public. Anyone from the public that wants to speak? Seeing no one from the public, we close it. I would entertain a motion.
Jane, you don't have any comments?
I would like, I guess I'll make a motion on application, variance request application 230101 to leave the shed where it is.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? One?
She was an aye. She was an aye.
That's
All right.
an aye.
Aye.
Our recommendation is for the city commission to approve the variance. Is that what it is then? Correct?
Recommend approval.
Recommend approval. Okay. You're welcome. All right, let's see. Board comments. Any board comments?
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. All right.
Can I ask Larry a question? What is the protocol on that with surveys? Because I ran into the same situation on my street with an issue, and it was about impervious surface, and nobody went and verified. The guy handed in a 5-year-old survey. There'd been 2 slabs added to that property. Nobody looked. They ran the calculations. Boom, approved it. I'm sitting there going, this guy's way over impervious. But nobody went out to the site and looked to see, is that survey accurate? Or is there a rule that says your survey can't be more than 2-3 months old?
Well, generally, not less than 2 years old. That's the general.
Because even then, that whole house was rebuilt from when this guy submitted the survey. And there was just a lot of things done, and came back with an approval on something that's like, how'd that happen?
Does your new code deal with survey age?
Yes.
Do you know what it is in the new code?
2 years.
Yeah. 2 years in the new code, in the new land development code is 2 years.
But is your office or your staff required to go out and at least do a site check to see if anything's been done? Or are you just too much to do? Is that's
We
can't handle it?
field inspections. The field inspections really are restricted to the building department. So for instance, if you're going to construct a pool or put a concrete slab in for a shed, just like in this instance, the zoning violation was discovered by the building official.
Right.
That went out there to give a final inspection, so the permit actually has expired. And it hasn't been finalized yet. So based on the decision of the city commission. But to answer your question, unless it's a larger project, for instance, a single-family home, we don't go out into the field, but what we do is we verify a foundation survey.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the critical point. If the foundation survey doesn't match the survey that was submitted,
right.
It could be less than, but not more than.
And the new code says 2 years?
Yes.
What's the existing code saying?
There is none.
There isn't, okay. Well, then that's...
We just say 2 years. That's been a policy.
2 years.
Okay. Just wondered. Thank you.
Larry, I have a quick question. Maybe I just missed it, but the car wash that was approved, I just saw where that property's for sale. What happened with the car wash?
No, the car wash is pulled, I understand they've pulled their permit. They had a couple of other items to address, one being to get a final approval for a driveway access permit to the site, and literally that's taken over 6 months from the county. And what they had not provided for me was an updated Gopher Tortoise survey. The survey they submitted was like 1.5 years old. So we requested another updated Gopher Tortoise. Typically after 90 days, you require another one, and they did provide that, and they're clean. But they are going forward. That sign that you're speaking of on the corner was the initial for sale sign that was put there by the then property owner. And for whatever reason, it's just never been removed, but they are building.
Isn't there a lot, there's another lot?
They said there's another lot to the east.
Okay.
Yes, about an acre.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Larry?
One announcement. This may be my last PAR board meeting as a part-time city employee. A kind of stepping back at the end of the month. So I don't know who will be in this seat next month. But it's been a pleasure working with everyone. And hope to see you around.
Larry?
Enjoy.
Oh, you've earned the right to back off.
Yeah.
Thank you for all your good help, everything you've done for us.
Yeah.
We will truly miss you. Can we use you as a consultant?
You know, it's a funny question you ask, because I actually asked the city manager, can I still stick around for special projects or something? And he said, you mean you want to become a consultant? I said, no, because then you'll have to pay me like a consultant. And I don't want to go that route. Just pay me what I earn now and I'm good. So I don't know what the outcome's going to be. I don't know what the city commission would want. There is going to be a transition program, and how that's going to work, I'm not really certain at this time. I think Karen Miller is going to be accepting more responsibility, and I told her, and I told the city manager that if they need any extra help, you know, or some insight or whatever, that I'd be more than happy to pitch in, because this is not something, I'm going to be quite honest with you, that I really want to do. But, you know, there's the other half of the duet here. And she says, you know, you were supposed to stay there for 6 months, and that was 8 years ago. And I'm happy to say I just turned 80 years old in November. So it's a little emotional for me, I'll be honest with you. It's a great bunch of people to work with. This guy here has been a lifesaver for me and always available, very responsive. Penny, I call her my grandmother, you know, but she's been phenomenal. And the little lady over there, Bonnie Blue Eyes, they've just been great to work with. So, but we'll see where it goes. You know, there's been some interesting projects come down the pike, and I would at least, you know, I mean, we have the hotel, you haven't seen it yet, but Flagler Fish Market has something pretty good coming along. Sun Brothers, that you're very familiar with, that's going to change. That little nucleus of the farmers market, even with the existing development on South 2nd Street, it's going to be the kind of Flagler Beach that you people envision. It'd be pretty nice. And this building here that we heard tonight, I mean, it'll be visible from the hotel. And it's just gonna look like a throwback, you know, this old brick building. And so anyway.
Good things.
Thank you.
Larry, thank you so much for your service all these years. We appreciate you very much. I think we're good. A motion?
I'll move to adjourn.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.